It has given me the faith that I can walk into any situation, and be effective and stay present and make it work. I can help you want to help yourself, and I can give you a lot of tools. I'm really big on homework. If I'm doing my work so that I'm not filtering all of your stuff through my stuff, then that line is super clean. And all I get is you. Yeah. It can amplify back to you things that you didn't even realize you were carrying around.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Vision Builders. It's a show about freedom where we talk about what it is, what it takes to create it, and the age-old practice of leveraging other people's hindsight for our own developing stories. And with me today is April Kline. I realized in introducing you, if I was going to say your name, it was going to take a while if I started going down the list of things you've done. You're an artist at heart.
A musician.
A musician. Well, I guess when I mean artist, you are among the many who think outside of the box. There's not a linear trail for you. In fact,
that is very true. For better or worse.
For better, for worse, for just the forming of our stories. So everybody, just a little bit of context. Going down April's, I don't know, you call it resume, CV. It's hard to do because she's kind of taken life. You've taken a big helping of life, you know. You've done a lot of things, and you've found a way to stitch every one of your experiences into the work that you're doing today in such a way that is an inspiration to me, because I've done a lot of things as well. And knowing that nothing is in vain.
No, I feel like both of us finally have figured it out. What thread did we need to sew all those pieces together?
Yeah. And so you grew up in a musical family. You spent some time in New York as a professional musician, a model. And then I don't know exactly how that came into body work and midwifery and the doula work that you do. And honestly, just counseling, really. People... how does all that happen? And I don't know that there's enough time in any one conversation to get to all that.
No, it took a lot of years to do it, so probably not. Yeah. The short version is life is super fun.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can just do one little thing. There's so many things.
There are so many
things, you know. Quarantine hit, and I've always wanted to play ukulele, and my daughter got me a ukulele, and
Lovely.
I spent a lot of time learning to play the uke.
That's awesome.
Right? Sitting on my couch by myself. Yeah. What else are you going to do?
Well, when you have a couch and time by yourself.
Hey, and how lucky was I that I had a couch and a uke and time.
That's amazing. You know, I want to take a few steps back. I want to talk a little bit about your background, because I feel like for anyone who knows you and might just think, or has heard your story, or has gone to your website, because you know your website does a pretty good job of kind of outlining the bits, right?
A little bit better, yeah.
They might go like, "Oh my gosh, you're a unicorn," they might say, but I think that the truth is a lot more relatable than.
Oh, that makes me happy.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I want to be relatable.
Well, I don't know if I know many humans walking the planet that are more relatable than you, but looking at your story, it's kind of Forrest Gumpy a little bit. Like you've done a lot of things. You've been a lot of places.
Okay.
Well, not in the, you know. I think I help you understand what I mean. Like in this story, he just found himself in all these places that wove together this incredible story, and yours is not anywhere near end. You know, this is not like cinema where you go, okay, and at the end, there's no, you know, this end. Your legacy continues. One thing though, when I was a young man, that I struggled with was I kind of was pretty good at a lot of different things, and I didn't know what that meant. And it got to the point where I started to almost have a disdain for my natural bend, because I couldn't, like, I was like, everybody else they figured it out. Like, why am I? And the older I get, the more experiences I've had, and the more I've kind of locked into what I'm doing now, helping people. I've kind of gotten to this place where, like, oh, that's why. That's why I've had those experiences.
You had to have all of those tastes.
And nothing, no amount of suffering or confusion was worthless.
That's right.
And you're a few steps ahead of me, I think, in
suffering in the past. Extra helpings of suffering.
And so I wanna hear a little bit about, like, at least from your perspective, how does this happen?
Well, you know, I got to be my dad's study buddy for his doctorate in psychology. That helped.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I think being a musician from, goodness, even before I was born, you know. My dad was a musician, an opera singer, and my mom was a actor also, and they loved musical theater, so they would put songs on and beat on my belly, beat on my mom's belly.
Yeah.
You know, so the rhythm was in there from the get-go. A lot of what I do, that sort of thinking outside the box, I think, comes from music being in my spirit, in my makeup, because I look for disharmony.
Wow.
Right? I look for places that don't sing true. And I think maybe that disharmony is purposeful. It's not always bad to be disharmonious, right? So there's a part of it too, is a deeper understanding or a faith maybe that there are times when those discordant pieces that don't feel good are really going to add depth and richness to the overall piece.
Yeah.
Right? And that, I think, partly has come with age and partly has come from just knowing a lot of music.
Yeah.
And a lot of people. And living it myself. To
you
your
mean
point.
You didn't get to just be an advisor to people by avoiding all the landmines?
Oh, yes. I just glossed over everything uncomfortable, and now I get to sit in my little tower. And
oh, by the way, and everybody who's watching this, if you've seen any of my content, you're starting to see this pattern. Like, anyone that I know who is you know, really helping people, really making an impact in the world, agrees on this one thing.
Tell me.
Failure. Falling down. Thinking you had it and then realizing you didn't. And having to go redesign and figure it out and all that sort of stuff. Like, that is all part of it. Failure is a part of the story. And I think sometimes it's without bleeding on people, it's our wounds that connect us to each other. And I really find that this, you know, when you say, I mean, and living it, like, and, you know, people out there, I don't know if they could feel what I just felt. When you say living, I was like, yeah, we lived it, didn't we? Like, we're living it still.
And we kind of limped our way through it, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know about you for sure. I think that you're like me in that we had some people to help us.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
People who loved us and wanted us to grow and get better. But I don't feel like I've had a specific guide. I feel like I've had to make up a lot of it along the way.
Yeah.
And again, for better or worse, the good thing is that it has given me a lot of confidence. It has given me the faith that I can walk into any situation, and be effective and stay present and make it work.
Yeah.
And that doesn't come from getting the easy A.
No. So you went on a bit of a journey from home. Like, you grew up, well, I guess you were born in the Midwest, west of the Midwest.
I was born in South Dakota.
And then Kansas, but then you did your high school here.
Right.
In this
My
area.
dad moved us here when I was starting high school. to go to Wright State to get his doctorate in psychology. And then I was adamant that I would never live in Ohio again.
Huh.
I had a wall-sized poster of the New York City skyscape. And I was out.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I went to Oberlin, started in the conservatory, switched to the college, and went straight to New York from there.
Yeah.
And never was I going to look back.
Yeah, interesting. Spoiler alert.
I'm back. I'd say Dayton is a vortex.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting place.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
It's easy in some ways to live here. And I don't take it lightly that it has afforded me the ability to raise my family and still have extra. I have extra energy. I have extra time, and I have extra funds because we're living here. If I had stayed in New York City,
well, I mean, that's, you're talking about a different planet.
Yeah, who knows what would have happened there.
Well, that's interesting. So, but you went and you tried it and you did some things. You met some people. You learned some things.
Oh yeah.
While you were up there.
I love New York City. I lived in and around New York City for 20 years.
It's not a.
No, it was not a short visit.
Visit?
In many ways, it still feels like home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure like there were some moments in time where you just built, like I feel that way about Middle Tennessee in a lot of ways. Like I went to MTSU, I lived in Murfreesboro.
That's where you grew up, like really grew up.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I am my father's son, my mother's son up until I leave.
Yeah.
And I'm still my father's son to this day. I'm still my mother's son to this day. But I had to create patterns for myself that served me. And some that I thought would that didn't.
Back to your conversation about failing.
Right, right. And the people who were there with me through that, you guys know who you are, and gals, they're still in a way like
they're your people.
You know, they're my people. You know, not taking anything away from any other relationships I've made anywhere else, but like you're talking about a cocoon state or a nesting phase of life. That was it for me.
Yeah, for sure.
So all right, so what I wanna get into a little bit is, you know, here's this idea. You've had all these experiences, you've done all these things, you've gone to all these places, but somewhere along the line, you decide that you want to connect with people and help them get unstuck. This is a pattern that I feel like keeps emerging with you. It's this idea of unstuck. And you said something a few moments ago that I'm still thinking about while still trying to have a conversation to be present.
I love that.
A little bit of a head trip. But, you know, you see moments of disharmony. When the song has stopped, you know, I think Chris Robinson of the Black Crowes famously said, you know, I don't think, you know, we're all songwriters, we're kind of imposters. He was kind of into that. He's like, you know, there's not a bunch of people writing songs. There's just one song. And as songwriters, what we're trying to do is just grab our piece of it. And I feel like there's something to be said about that in life in general, whether you're a musician or not. Yeah. I don't know that it matters. Like, there is something that connects us all. And there's a role that we have to play as it relates to helping each other. Yeah.
Well, we're co-creating the song at all times, for sure.
And so when you said sometimes that disharmony is purposeful, the immediate thing that I thought of was, yeah, of course it is, because we need each other. I didn't come into the world with a user's manual.
No. Oh, I didn't get yours. No.
No? Yeah. And as a result, I'm trying to figure stuff out. I'm trying to figure out how I can contribute more, how I can grow more, how I can be more to not only myself, but the world around me that might be looking to me.
Well, and that's what starts to happen as you step into that path, right? Is you find more and more that you want to help other people do the same. right? I find myself saying to my clients all the time, this is hard work. It's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
I give you a lot of credit for showing up here. And I will tell you that on this side, it's really delicious. Mm-hmm. Like on the other side of where you are, it's really good. Come on over.
Yeah.
It's nice over here.
That's all. Yeah. Is it, there's a saying, everything you ever wanted is just on the other side of I don't feel like it.
That's good.
Every dream you ever had, every confidence that you could create or belief in yourself is really just on the other side of.
It is, and it's so easy to feel hopeless about that, though.
Yeah.
So easy. I mean, what people are struggling against now is so heavy, I find. A lot of them want to just throw their hands up and quit. And I have the opposite. I don't know if I feel like I've trained myself to do that. I have trained myself to do that, to not roll over and say I'm done. Of course, I have my moments, but they're moments.
Yeah.
And the opposite instinct is really hardwired in me now, which is, oh yeah, you want me to roll over? Watch this.
I want you to speak on that for just a little bit, because I have learned something similar, but I want to hear from you because our paths are very similar in some ways, but they're the moving pieces are different, right?
Yeah. I would say, our choice of medium is very different.
Yeah, exactly. But, you can absolutely, I believe that you can absolutely train a positive loop response to the things that right now might terrify you, or because you start to see that they're beneficial. Or you I don't know, you talk about that a little bit.
No, you had it.
Yeah, it was like
you were on it.
I think what I've found is there are certain things that I just don't want to do at a stage of my life. But some mentor, I don't know, like in my business, getting on the phone and making phone calls.
Always a fun one.
Yeah. Well, I don't.
Why?
Why did I not want to do that? I think probably because my natural state is very internal processor. And when I was a kid, I hated being interrupted.
That's interesting.
Being interrupted doing what, you say? Just thinking.
Being.
Just being. And so somewhere in me, there was this weird, irrational thought, even though I know I have a way to help people, of like, but they probably don't want to be bothered. Well, that's not most people. Most people love being thought of and considered and reached out to.
Right.
And I do too. But, I wrongly conflated my own love of metacognition, thinking about my thoughts, as a universal need for everyone.
You fell in the trap of thinking everyone is like you.
Everyone is like me. Well, I grew up in a big family. And so those moments of being alone with my thoughts were rare.
They're
and
precious.
Yeah. So I created this whole alternate reality, but then I started to realize, I did some math. I started to realize what it was worth to me to get on the phone.
You're very evidence-based in your approach.
You're not wrong.
I like it. It's a good tool.
Well, it might keep me from leaping into action sometimes, but eventually I get there.
So that might be how you and I are the most different.
Yeah. Well,
I think we're both really brave, but maybe in different ways.
Yeah. Well, I think what happens for me is I'm perfectly happy to borrow somebody else's experience and say, well, I mean, I feel like it was this way in sports. If it can be done, I can do it. That was kind of, but I just needed to see that it could be done.
Yeah. But that meant somebody else had to go do it.
So yeah, had
to go do the undoable thing.
The undoable thing. Like all I need to know is that somebody wanted this. For me to expect that there's no excuse for me not to. If it's something within the realm and scope of something that I actually could do. You know what I mean? Like,
did you ever have the drive to be the person that did the undoable thing?
Yes, but kind of by accident. Because I'm a creative. And so as a creative, like you sometimes spend a lot of time on your own and nobody ever told you that the thing that you're doing can't be done. And those are the moments where I feel like I've pioneered the most. Was not because I was looking at this thing that if anybody had given me a scouting report that something was undoable, and then I also found out that somebody had done it, I was like, giddy up, let's go do that thing. But if I didn't have a scouting report at all, I was happy to bumble around trying things. So like, I don't know that I don't know that I've made a lot of original ideas on purpose. I can certainly look through the rear view mirror and say like, yeah, there were a lot of why not moments where I just tried something. But it was mostly because it was a solution to something I was working on rather than, oh, I just want to go try something new. Like, I don't, you know.
Any inventor will tell you that it's all accidents because you were bumbling around.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? That's what I think. We were talking earlier before we started about what our kids have lost in the way we raise them. I think that's the biggest loss.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even just that I was a musician from the get-go. It was that I lived in a small town where my grandfather was the president of the little Christian college, and both my parents taught in the school system, and everyone knew our family. And I was free to go anywhere in that town. I would leave the house in the morning and not be home until 6 o'clock at night. My parents had no idea where I was. I would go in people's homes and help myself to cookies. They would be happy to see me. I would go out and walk 2 miles out to the gigantic mulberry tree and pick bushels of mulberries.
Oof.
You know, walk out the other direction to the Andreas's farm and get fresh milk and play with the kittens. You know, it was...
Wow, yeah.
And things happened, you know. There was a time I fell and messed up my knee and had to walk all the way back to town with a messed up knee. And the time my dog took off after a rabbit and dragged my hand along a fence and I had a whole handful of splinters. You know, you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't have those types of experiences for my children. I feel like I've had to manufacture some of those opportunities for my kids.
I'm so grateful you're saying this now that I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old.
When my kids were little, we had 2 big dogs, and Kayla was probably 8 or 9, which means Hani was around 4 or 5, and they took these big dogs out for a walk in our neighborhood, and I got a phone call from a neighbor that I barely knew saying, "Did you know your girls are out walking by themselves?" In our neighborhood. Right?
Walking by themselves with your 2 big dogs?
Gigantic dogs.
That's interesting.
It is. It disturbs me, this movement away from giving people, especially little people, time to bumble.
Yeah.
I like that word.
Bumble. Yeah. Whoa.
Where's the bumbling opportunities?
I forget who this was because she's not a person that's in my space at all, and I don't remember her name, but it was one of the videos that Inc. magazine puts out, and she was talking about if any of you are watching this know who this is, put it in the comments so I can close the loop in my head.
That's right. You'll think of it tonight at 2 in the morning.
But she was talking about super successful CEO of multiple companies, and she was saying one of the difference makers for her was that her parents every evening for dinner they would have dinner together, and they had to show up with a list of like what went well, what did you fail at. So there was this inherent sort of teaching that you got to try stuff that you're not good at in order to fail.
So
and you better
can
have
bring
a fail
it to
story.
dinner. Yeah, right. That's good.
But the thing that we were talking about before we got started that is I think important to talk about in general, because I don't think we're going to change course. We're just basically talking about how right now we are living in an age, and I don't want to time date this, and maybe me saying that is just being overly optimistic. I hope not. But right now we're kind of in a space of history where people have, not all people, I doubt even most people, but the loudest people have forgotten how to listen to one another.
Yeah.
And instead we surround ourselves with people who agree with us and just continue to accelerate our own biases. And unfortunately the result is we take everything personally, and the thing that I was saying to you is for the person who's 20 or younger, who was never made to sit in a room full of adults
and learn how
discourse works, and just sit down and be quiet and listen. Like, for the most part, there's a whole generation of kids who, when adults were talking, were sent off to go do something by themselves, some computer thing, some TV thing, and they never developed the skill of how 2 or 3 or 10 people can disagree and still have a sharing of ideas where everyone walks away with their ideas being challenged and grateful for the experience.
Yeah.
When a 20-year-old is like, no, I'm not listening, there's an empathy I have for them,
sure.
you know?
Because they've missed out.
Because they missed, like, they're, you know, when I was a kid, that was common. I wasn't the only, you know, I mean, I could say it was because, you know, immigrant kid, but I don't think it was that. I think there was a time when that was just common. People did that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not common anymore. We have too many things that we can give our kids. And so one of the things that I've done with, like, my wife and I together have fought to do, Anna, and I, you know, read some books and, you know, decided we wanted to give our kids the skill of self-soothing in every way possible.
Nice.
I love my babies, and they're super cute and cuddly, and I would have loved to rock my kids to sleep, but I never ever did. That's with the exception of, like, sometimes they were sick or whatever, but, like, as soon as they were better, we went right back to lay you down, you figure this out. And no shade to any parent who rocked their kids to sleep, because there's a lot of reasons why that might feel good too.
Right.
But the reason Anna and I made the choice not to do that is because at the very base level, one of the biggest issues that I see is that people, when they're hit with micro trauma or stresses in their world, they just
fold.
They fold because as soon as that pressure starts to approach their space, they need something to hold on to. They need something to hug them. They don't have the cycle in their brain to let them know. Because I was an athlete. I used to play basketball. The first time I ever hit knee to knee with somebody, I was so terrified by how much that hurt that I made it worse in my head, and I just didn't know if I was going to be able to walk again. By the 30th time that happened, I just ran down the court and as if it never happened, because the fear was gone. I knew I would be okay. And I feel like a lot of kids are starting at a disadvantage because they don't know they'll be okay.
I don't think it's just kids, unfortunately.
It's not just kids. You're right. You're right.
In my experience, it's not just kids. This is a common conversation in my room.
Yeah.
I don't feel like myself. I feel disconnected. I feel depressed. The word anxiety gets thrown around. There's a lot of self-diagnosing with anxiety.
Yeah.
And I got to gather my thoughts on that one. That's a prickly pear.
Yeah.
Because anxiety is a true diagnosis. Do I think it's overdiagnosed now? I do. And you got to be careful with that one, because you don't want someone to suffer and need specific attention for something that's a true diagnosis. But you can have anxious thoughts and not have anxiety.
For sure.
So I would like to be really clear with that, because sometimes the diagnosis is a blessing. Sometimes it's like, oh, thank God I have an answer for everything that has been happening, and I don't feel gaslighted anymore with everyone saying I'm a crazy person.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a curse in that it gives you the ability to sit back and go, well, I can't have anxiety.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I can't do that. It makes me anxious. So for me, that's one of those, oh yeah, you think I have anxiety? Watch me fix that.
That's interesting. So, like, that's become one of the things that presents where you go, okay, let's address that. Which says to me, you've seen this pattern. You've heard this song before. You know how it goes.
This song I know well.
You could sing along.
Thank you. Such a good way to talk about this stuff. Yeah, people hit my door And they sit up in their chair on their side of the room, and I say, so what brought you to my pink velvet chair? Mm-hmm. And they usually say, well, I have no idea. 6 people just told me I had to go see you. And they're like, I don't even really understand what you do.
Okay. Right? I'm going to pause you for just a second. If you want to know how people just arrive at your door and with no idea why they're there, but they trust so deeply that they ought to be there, I would submit that a level of integrity with loving people to the nth degree will get you there. Anyway, go ahead.
Word of mouth. I've never advertised. I've done the opposite of that. I'm kind of under wraps. I don't have a sign on my door. I don't, you know. Someone yesterday just told me I still have my old address on Google.
It's like, oh.
Yeah, you kind of have to know the secret handshake, I guess, to find me.
That's funny.
It's either that or the other one is I've tried everything and I'm getting worse. And that chokes me up. I've tried everything and nothing's helping. And maybe you can help me. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And I say, I can help you. I can help you want to help yourself, and I can give you a lot of tools. I'm really big on homework. Yeah. I give a lot of homework. And I hold people accountable if they want to be held accountable. Yeah. And I'm lucky in that by the time people find me, they're super motivated. I think of them as big, luscious peaches hanging off the lowest branch. I'm just like, I get to feel like a genius. Yeah. Because I'm just kind of like, oh, yes.
But surely it didn't start that way for you.
Oh, I think I've been pretty lucky. Yeah? Yeah, I do.
Wow.
I attract pretty awesome people into my world.
Well, I wanted you to, okay, so...
But no, I hear what you're... No, it's true. I had to do a lot of hard work. Yeah. Had to give and give and give and, you know, in a lot of people's books, overgive, I'm sure.
Yeah, well...
52-hour births. You know, that's some school. Yeah. You don't want to amortize out what I made per hour on that one.
No. Well, you were there when Alma came into the world. And her name, Alma, means like one who nourishes the soul. Mm. And we, honestly, the time that we spent together was... So I use the word redemptive because I can't think of another word that's more appropriate. Vera was born, and it was a 71.5-hour labor. You know the story. Yeah. They don't. But you know the story.
All you have to say is 71.5-hour labor.
And it was, you know, at the end, we ended up with this incredible little person who we have the wonderful, great gift of parenting. But the road to that
pretty hellacious.
Was it was hellacious for sure. Yet we shared that with you. Like, I came into your office not really looking, I mean, I don't know what I was looking for. Our mutual friend Tanya, I said to her, like, you know, these are the words that I said to her that led her to go, aha, do you know April? We need to. I was just, one day I was at her office and I said, you know, just off the cuff, just said, I don't know if there's any amount of money I wouldn't pay if there was just somebody who went around helping, you know, postpartum moms just get back to their routines in their life. And it wasn't like a direct, that's what April does. It was just like she thought of you first, and it was just, she was like, that's a postpartum doula, and oh, by the way, you need to meet April Kline.
You hadn't even thought about having someone help you with the birth part.
No, not at all.
You were just like my wife is going to need help again after this baby comes.
Well, yeah, and I was just trying to think, like, how do I gather the resources? How do I support her? Like, how do I do those things? And goose egg, I had no idea. And I also knew, like, the first one was tough. And so we're sitting there talking. I kind of share with you what's going on. And we just had a human connection.
For like 3 hours.
Yeah, it was unexpected. And then you said, well, first, I want to help you with your birth. And I just remember nodding and going, well, yes. Okay.
Where do I sign?
We'll do that. And then, but the result was my wife, I can't compare my experience with hers. I have mine, she has hers, but like she's got the lion's share of.
Let's be very, very
clear. Yeah, like. It's not the lion's share. She got the whole share. Like I just had a different role altogether.
That's right.
So she got to experience the birth she always wanted. The one she dreamed about.
Yeah.
And I don't think there were certainly moments in that time when I just remember thinking, oh, that's what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah.
And I know she has echoed the same. And so one thing that has just been your story, I believe, is in a way, it was the long play for us. It wasn't like we came in and you did some hocus pocus and you laid your hands on us and then redemption, right? Like that's not how it works.
No, that's not how redemption works.
It was. It
would be nice if it was just like you're healed.
Yeah. Just slain in the spirit. Like if that
I'm working on that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll let you know when I have it down.
I'll tweet it out.
Thanks.
That's funny. I just said tweet. Anyway, whatever. But what's interesting is through the process of working with you, something that we didn't even know was holding us down in our lives was resolved. And I know that this is just what you do. It's how you show up in the world. And you said the word you've attracted some really great people to you. Well, honestly, I don't think that's by accident, because
or maybe it's just that I decide everybody that comes in is great.
Okay, I can agree with that possibility.
Yeah.
But this, you wrote a book, and I don't.
Wait before you leave the other part. So. It's what you said. All I do is listen. That's it. That's really the only magic that I do. But I listen in a different way. I don't just hear your words. Right? And I used to think I had to have my hands on somebody to hear it. Right? That's why I went to massage school, because I really thought it was all about the touch. But I can feel what somebody feels like without having my hands on them. So that empathy, I can sit across the room from someone and I can feel where that line goes in from me to you.
Yes.
And that, if I'm clean, if I'm doing my work so that I'm not filtering all of your stuff through my stuff, if I don't need you to fill a hole that I have, if I don't need you to like me or affirm that I'm important or all of those ego layer things, then that line is super clean. And all I get is chew.
Yeah.
And I feel chew. And I think what it's like for you to be chew, and it amplifies. I can amplify back to you things that you didn't even realize you were carrying around.
Yeah.
So it's easier sometimes for us to hear another person's voice say the thing that's really hard for us to even, we don't want to look. So I can say, well, you two sweet people, I want you to tell me how that birth went. And you both kind of go. And I say, hey, for real, we got to get this out.
Yeah.
So we're clean going into the next one, because you don't want the next one to be all colored by the old one. You take a big breath and you start to tell the story, and it's kind of here. And I keep listening, and I say little noises of tell me more. And then that was really hard right there, because there's always a part where it's like, that's the thing. And when Anna said that thing, and everything just goes, right? And I say, oh, that was the hardest part. And she loses it And then I go, oh, and they always apologize for crying. And I always say, thank God you're crying. That means your energy is moving. Now things are being washed clean. Please, there's tissues. Please cry. It makes me so happy that you're crying.
Yeah.
And then the whole story starts to come out, and the meat, the rotting meat that's stuck behind the story, behind the words that she's learned to say, well, I have a beautiful baby, and I didn't die, and really other people have it worse than me, and at least my husband was with me, and somehow we have this meeting out of our own traumas and whether they're really traumatic enough to warrant how we feel. And I say, screw that. Trauma is trauma. And little tiny trauma, when you're 2 and you fall down, that's traumatic. And that's valid because you don't know what it feels like to fall down. That's horribly traumatic, and we minimize it, and we teach little people that what they're feeling is not really what they're feeling.
Back to the gaslighting. It starts young.
It starts at newborn stage.
Yeah.
You're not really hungry. It hasn't been 2.5 hours yet. You're not really hungry. Or you're asking too much. You want to be on me all the time? Ugh, that's too much. You're too much. You ask too much.
Wow.
But I don't do that at my best, right? My best is good. I'm not always at my best. But at my best, I'm dang good at that. You cannot be too much for me. If I'm on my game and I'm clean, you cannot be too much for me. Whatever you've got, I can be a bigger container than whatever you've got.
You have referenced Kline several times.
It's the heart of it.
Yeah, and one of those things, I mean, the first time you said it was kind of what triggered me mentioning the book, because your journey to figuring out what Kline is a series of exercises. Like, you don't, I mean, imagine the person who thinks that, well, because I showered 6 months ago, like, why are you holding your noses? I did shower after all.
Yeah, I'm a showerer.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a person who showers from time to time. You know, I truly believe that the results of our life are directly related to our habits and our rituals and the things that we can trust that we will do, you know. And sometimes when we go backwards, when we stop doing the things that we used to trust ourselves to do, not only are we missing out on the result of that activity, but we're also hitting with an axe our confidence. And so it's like doubly traumatic.
It is.
And or exponentially. I don't know what's actually happening, but I feel like having daily habits that you can start to build to. There's a lot of people out there who talk about your daily routines and daily habits and what you ought to do, and they'll lay it out and say, here's my daily routines and here's what you ought to do. And in reading your book, it was honestly the first time that by the way, the self-help space.
Yes.
I started back with like Earl Nightingale and
back in the day.
Yeah, like of course Napoleon Hill and Jim Rohn and Wayne Dyer. By the way, I didn't bring this stuff. My dad brought this stuff into the house, right?
Yeah.
Like so we're going way back.
Yeah.
So when I say to you, there's a unique voice in the way that you come across the work that you put on paper. I'm not saying it as someone who's maybe read a book or saw a meme.
No,
from
I know
Brian
that
Tracy.
about you.
I've read a few things. So we'll just say that. And so when I look at your book, I see the uniqueness. I mean, a lot of times, like, everybody tells you what you ought to do, but like that's not really the problem.
No.
You know, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine earlier, and you know, it's like the whole idea of the fitness industry being so big. I mean, it's like we know that if you're putting something in your mouth that has 15 ingredients, you probably shouldn't.
Pretty basic.
We know that.
Pretty solid information.
If you want to eat right, like maybe try putting a few different things on your plate that are just the one ingredient, right? Like, I don't know.
Good plan.
It's not rocket science, people say, but like it's not even squirrel science. Like, it's not complicated.
Squirrel science.
I don't know. I've never said that before. Awesome. But But the thing is doing it. And what's crazy to me is that a lot of times when somebody tells us, "Here's what you ought to do. If you want to be like me, if you want to have the success I've had, do this." Unfortunately, it becomes the threshold of the shame cycle for most people.
Absolutely.
And so what I love about your book is that it comes with a lot of vulnerability of your own story. So thanks. But two, it's broken down into, hey, I mean, this is not a book that somebody would ever sit down and feel like, well, I started reading this book, so by this time next week I should have it done. It doesn't feel like that at all.
Right.
It feels like, here's one thing. Get that under your belt. Get used to that.
Live with that for a while.
Try it on. Break it in, so to speak. Now here's another. Now here's another. And that's how I feel like change happens, truthfully. The change that stays is incremental. When I used to run a gym, people used to come and ask all the time, how often should I work out? I've never done this before. And I was like, whoa, let's back up. How often will you? And they might come back with, no, I understand what you're getting at. What I'm saying is, he's like, you're fit. How do I do? And I'm like, if you try to do what I do this week, it'll be 3 months before I see your face again.
Yeah.
So let's go back. How often could you show up? And then let's build something within the context of what you can trust yourself to do.
That.
Yeah. And thereby, when people take the one bite at a time, my experience has been they start to snowball wins. They start to believe they can do it. They start to change their identity, which then changes their expectation.
So when you do that with people, and I know that you're doing that in every area that you're working, when you do that, you're undoing a lifetime of learning that they should get their validation from outside of themselves. That's really what you're doing. I talk about it like a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this before. I really maybe went overboard with my 2 girls in teaching them that there would always be someone who was willing to fill up a hole if they had one.
Okay.
On every level.
Yep.
And that their job was to make sure that they filled their own holes. Don't walk around like a big open hole waiting to be filled up by somebody else. It leaves you vulnerable. It leaves you open to abuse. It leaves you way too open to being susceptible to commercialism. Right? That's where they want us. And this is where I get my back up and I'm like, oh yeah, watch me again. Like, you can't make me want to buy your deodorant because I don't think I smell bad. So keep your deodorant.
Yeah.
Right? But it's a very un-American, at this point, a very un-American concept to be that free, which is really ironic.
Yeah.
Really ironic.
I love that you landed there because I'm moved to agree with you. One of the reasons I started the show is because we're not listening to each other. We are missing out on the human experience in the way it was designed to be.
And that's a huge hole.
That's a huge hole. And it riddles us with fear and makes us incapable of showing up as like the baseline version of ourselves.
Correct.
Like a lot of us are walking around in essentially a remedial life experience.
Oh, for sure.
Like it's not the lack of the big ideas, it's the lack of the grasp of the very simple ones. Like just
the small things.
The small things.
Just,
see what we're doing here?
Little things done consistently.
These little things. I just realized that I held this up to kind of the camera where the light is, and now it's all washed out. Anyway,
that's funny.
Small changes, profound results, 25 simple tools to help you live your best life. And, I love workbooks because it gives me a chance to decide, I'm going to put in this effort today. I'm going to do this work today. And it also gives me an opportunity to look back and measure. And it's like, well, did I do the work? If I didn't do the work, I can't complain about the results that I didn't get.
Yeah.
And because they're so small changes,
you get to be successful.
Yeah. And I'm not knocking big changes. Like, I'm not saying that a shock system
there's moments of profundity that are transformational.
Absolutely.
But we forget that little things can be transformational. I was thinking on the way up here about the financial part of all of this and thinking I have spent most of my life being bad at money, right? And looking away from it because I know I'm bad at it, which just made it worse, right? It just made it a tangled nightmare that I never wanted to look at, and every day that went by, it got worse. So I finally got it through my thick head as I was writing this book that it was a hole. It was a place where my power, my energy was leaking out. And it left me vulnerable and open to a lot of other people and programs, and it was a vulnerability. I think of it as an Achilles heel. I don't want to have an Achilles heel. So I took my own advice and I started doing little tiny things consistently. So first, I made an automatic withdrawal into a stash account every week, just a small amount. And then I said, what percentage of what I make do I want to give to help others? Bearing in mind that I give a lot of myself. But monetarily, if I'm thinking of money as power, which I do, as freedom, really is what I think of money as. It buys me the ability to do what I want to do. What percentage of that did I want to give to others? And then I started to set that into a different account and disperse that every quarter. And then what percentage of it did I want to go towards my kids' college? And what percentage of it did I want to go to this and this and this? And then I started to say this prayer, which is, bring me more money because I'm doing really good things with the money I already have. And I was, and it felt so good.
Wow.
It was little.
Faithful with a little.
But 6% of a little is still 6% of what I had to give, right? It's like Bible stories, right? When you go to someone's home and they have so little, but they offer everything, and then you go to the rich person's home and they don't even bring you a glass of water. You know, I'm steeped in those stories. Steeped. Again, for better or worse. That old rich person threw the camel in the eye of the needle and all of that. I think that that's a misunderstanding. I think that's not my experience with money now. My experience with money is very different. My experience with money is that the more that I have, the better I do with it, the more better I can do.
One of the things that, not that this was supposed to turn into like a Bible study, but David prays, "Blessed be the Lord my God, who trains my hands for battle and my fingers for war." And like, I know that what he's talking literally, because David fought a lot of wars. But what that has meant to me is, the character to hold on to something is a prerequisite to the something. And the thing you in order to create the confidence that you'll actually execute on something, you just have to start in a small measure to create the space for the bigger measure.
But it requires you to be really unhappy with yourself and to look over there where I didn't look at my money for literally years. Like, I did not look. So it sucked to look. It really sucked to look. It was a lot of shame, a lot of tears. And I finally started to be kind to myself about it and say, you did the best you could. It wasn't great, but you were doing the best you could with what little you had to bring to the table. But you have more to bring to the table now. And that's my everyday. That is my everyday. I do not want to ever not be able to be helpful again. I don't want to be so hobbled myself I don't want to be the one that people have to escort to the exit door. I want to be showing people where the door is.
Yeah. You know, you're kind of low-key recommending that people would write books.
Kinda.
Because what you just said, I mean, this is your, up until now, your life's work, or the evidence of it, kind of put in a way that somebody else could experience it, which I'm so grateful that you did.
Yeah, I'm glad it happened.
But you're being taught by it. You're like, you wrote this book, and you're going around and you're talking about the book, and
dude,
or you were before COVID.
I read sometimes a chapter. I was reading it every week on Instagram Live, and sometimes I don't remember writing that.
I have a similar experience with stuff that I've written. You know, in an earlier podcast, I shared the idea is, you know, sometimes when you're doing what you're called to do, like when you're multiplying the gifts that you've been given, gifts not just in talent, but also in experiences, when you're multiplying those gifts, there's a funny thing that happens. You start to project out into the future brilliance that you yourself have not yet attained. Like,
they call it downloads. Or
yeah, people say
God picked up my pencil. Or
yes, yeah. And I would say all of those things are reasonable descriptions of what's happening. But you know, really, I mean, there have been times when I've written things down and then found it.
And you're like, dang, that's brilliant.
Like, that's in my handwriting, but I am not. I need this right now. Like, this is better than me, and I feel like we all have an opportunity to experience better than ourselves if we just create the space for better by just doing the small things. So
little things with consistency.
With consistency. I wish we could talk all day.
Gosh, me too.
That would be awesome. How can people get a hold of you? How can people get connected to what you're doing?
Easiest way to find me is my website, which is just Love April Kline. LoveAprilKline.com.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I will put that in the comments. Hey, if you liked what you just saw, I would invite you to like this video. If you're listening on podcast, leave a comment, especially if on Apple, because that can really controls how other people get to experience it. And so if you're also, we want to know what you thought, how this hit you. I mean, if you want to get in touch with me or April, we happen to live in the same town-ish. So if you reach out to me, I mean, obviously April, you'll be tagged in all this stuff. So if you want to continue the conversation in the comments, by all means do so. And if you really, really liked this experience, I would invite you to subscribe, leave comments, share with friends.
Do it.
Because we're just building a community of people who are going to talk about these things. And so with that, I thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure.
And
always fun
have
to
this
talk
conversation.
With you.
As always, build a vision, build a life.